Hi there, and welcome to the video. Today we are going to focus on building chatbots. And I thought it would be a really good time to get back into it now because I recently released the second major version for React Chatbot Kit. And we're going to use this library and we're going to have some fun building out a new chatbot. Now, some of you may know I work for an open source company called Unleash. And basically, it's a feature toggling solution. We're the largest open source provider in the world, and we provide this service for free, and we have some commercial offerings on top of that. But all of the code that you're going to see today is open source and on GitHub, and you can dig through it and see what's what. So that's what we'll be using, and I thought it'd be fun to see if we can create a chatbot that can simplify some of the workflows inside of this tool. So without further ado, let's go ahead and all right, so here we are inside of the application code, and we'll go ahead and make sure that we import the library that we want to, or download the library that we want to work with. So we'll do yarn add react chatbot kit. Now, while that's loading, we can go ahead and take a look at the documentation because there are a few steps that we need to take care of in order to get started. So first of all, we're going to grab this snippet of code right here to import the component and the CSS. And we'll paste that in here. And after that, let's go ahead and just see what we end up with if we try to put this directly into our code here. So we're in the render function of the app component now. So we'll put the chatbot in here and we'll hit save. And then we'll go ahead and go to the application that I have running on my local machine. And I'll go ahead and log into that. And what I expect now is that I'm going to have a chatbot or something chatbot-like if I scroll down to the bottom of the screen here. So let's just go ahead and go all the way down here. And down here, you can see the component that we just initialized. So we need to go ahead and add a little bit of styling to this. So we'll go back to the code and we'll wrap this in a div here. So we already have that ready, prepared for us. So basically we're just fixing the position and we're giving it a box shadow so it's more easily visible. So if we take a look now, we have this box that follows along the bottom right hand of the screen. And basically it says that we have forgotten some props, all right? And it gives us a link to the docs. But we already have the documentation open here, so we can go ahead and take a look. And it seems like we need 3 more files. So we do need a config, which is the configuration file. So we'll go ahead and grab that. And what I'll do is I'm going to create a new folder in source called chatbot. And I will create a new file called config.js. And I'll paste it in. And then the next piece we need is the action provider. So I'll copy this code and I will create an action provider file. And the last piece or file that we need to create is the message parser. So we'll create a new file, call it message parser.js, and then we'll paste that in. And it seems like we need to add this here because it wasn't part of the example. And now that we have that, we can go back to our app ESX file, and we need to import these files. So let's go up and we'll do import config from chatbot config. We'll do import message parser from one directory down and chatbot message parser. And then we'll do import action provider from chatbot action provider. All right, so now we have all 3 files. We'll gonna go ahead and scroll down to the chatbot and input them as props. So we'll say config, we'll say message parser, and we'll say action provider. All right, so now if we head back to the browser, we should be able to see our chatbots, and we do. So now we have this area here, and we have the initial message that we initialized through our config, and we can type something here, and you can see the message is being output into the container, but we're not getting any response yet. So you can also see that we have an issue here where the containing div is extending a little bit. So what we can do is we can go ahead and find the element that's overflowing here. So let's see this one. So it looks like the inner container has some margin bottom that we might want to get rid of. Let's grab this class. We can go back to our code. We'll go to app CSS, and we'll add the class here, and we'll say margin bottom 0. And then just go back to app tsx, and we have to make sure that our imports are properly configured. So let's see, where are we importing that? Should be in index tsx maybe. Yeah, that should take care of it. So if we go back to our browser now, we don't have that overflow anymore. So that's how we can customize the styling. Just grab the classes and override them in your own CSS, and make sure that they override the import from React Chatbot Kit. Okay, so now that we have that, let's go ahead and make a basic action. All right, so we'll go ahead and open up the action provider, and we'll create a new method here called handle hello. And what it's going to do is we're going to create a message, and we're going to call this create chatbot message. We'll say hello, nice to meet you. And now we need to insert it into the chatbot state. So in order to do that, we can use the set state function that we have available here. And we'll say prev, because we want to grab the previous state as well. So we'll return an object, and we'll use the previous states, and we'll take the messages array, and we'll copy over the previous messages, and we'll include the new message as well here, like that. And we need to wrap this with parentheses. So let's remove this actually. All right, so now we have the action. The next thing we need to do is we need to go to the message parser, because the message parser is going to decide whether or not the action gets triggered. So what we'll do is we'll say if message to lowercase dot includes hello, then we want to run this action provider handle hello. Okay, so now we have the function here, the action, and if the message that the user inputs includes hello, then we are going to trigger this action. So let's head back to the browser, and we'll go back to the application, and we'll try talking to our chatbot here. So now you can see we have the action ready to go. So now we're going to try and do something. Right. So just a small detail I noticed here is that the styling we didn't seem to take effect. So I'm going to take a look at that now, and I suspect it's because we are in app tsx where we're importing this, and the actual app css file that we are overriding with is happening earlier in the chain. So we are using it in index tsx. We are importing app. So what we need to do is we need to change the order of the imports so that React Chatbot Kit comes first and then the app CSS comes second. That's going to make sure that the app CSS overrides. So if we go ahead and go back to the browser and hit refresh, now hopefully we are going to have the styling being applied. So when you're dealing with the imports in Webpack and in bundlers, you need to be aware of the order of your imports. So that's something to keep in mind. And it also applies to when you're importing components that have, if you have local style sheets, you have to be aware of the order of the component you import if you want to override. So just a small tip regarding CSS and styling right there. But yeah, let's keep going. So what I want to do is basically I want to say something like create feature, and I want that to create a feature toggle for me. So let's go ahead and see if we can implement that. So we want to go ahead and head over to the code, and first of all we need to add an API call for this. So in the code here we have something, a few helper functions to help us interface with the API. So I'm going to create a new method in this use feature API hook, and that's going to be create feature, and it's going to be an async method, and basically we want to grab the project ID, and we want to grab let's put it in the right place. So project ID, feature ID, and we are going to create the path, which is going to be, yeah, that's almost right. It's a post to projects, project ID, features, feature ID. That's correct. This needs to be create request. And then we're going to say not data, but we're going to do try catch here. So we'll make a request to rec folder. So don't worry too much about this. Basically, these are just helper functions to make interfacing with the API a little bit easier. You can go ahead and look up the code on GitHub if you're interested in seeing how it's done. For now, we're going to create this method and we're going to expose it through the export here, or the return. So now we have the method to create a feature, and we want to go ahead and make sure that we can trigger this. So what we need now is a widget that we can render with a chatbot message. So you can create widgets that you can render with any chatbot message. Which basically means that any React component that you can make, you can display inside of the chat. So what we'll do is we'll go to the chatbot, create a folder here called widgets, and we'll create a create feature CSX or CSX file for now, and we'll say const create feature. And what we want to do is we want to go ahead and import use feature API, and we want to go ahead and do create feature, and that's going to use this feature API hook. And then we'll return a div. We'll say we'll add a button here, And let's go ahead and create an array of random words. So crazy, banana, hammock, castle, interesting, birch. Just some ways that we can create some innovative feature toggles here. And then we'll say const feature toggle name equals this. And we'll add a second one. And we'll go ahead and say, let's do create a feature toggle named feature toggle name. And we'll go ahead and const create feature toggle or handle create. And we'll say create try async create feature. And we'll pass the project ID is going to be default, and the feature toggle name is going to be the feature toggle name that we create here. And we'll go ahead and catch if we have any errors. And we can also accept as a parameter here the action provider. So we'll go ahead and say action provider handle create success. And we'll go ahead and create that action. But first, let's make sure this is properly placed here. And then we'll say create feature, say variant, contains, color primary. And we need to import the button from Material UI. And then let's go and export default the create feature widget. And we'll give this a style property and say margin bottom run. Okay, so now we have that. Let's go ahead and go to the config and register this as a widget. So we'll go ahead and say widgets. And let's go ahead and go to the documentation. And we'll open up the widgets section. And you can see here that we have to provide an array. And this is the format that we're going to be using. So let's go back and we'll put an array here. And we can paste in this object. And let's say create feature is the name. And the function is called create feature. And we can skip this. So now that we have the feature, we can go ahead and create an action in the action provider. And we'll say, we'll extract this into a message updater. So handle update. And it's going to take a message. And we'll say this set state. And we'll go ahead and do, instead of handle hello, we'll say handle create. And we'll create a message which is equal to this, create chatbot message. Sure, let's create a feature toggle. And the widget is going to be create feature. So we're passing that in the options object here. Now let's go ahead and say this handle update. We'll pass in the message, and then we had a handle create success. So we're going to go ahead and create that as well. And we'll create a new message here that just says, fantastic, I just created a new feature toggle for you. And we'll say handle update, and we'll pass the message here. All right, so we have to add this here. And let's see where we're at. So we'll open up the browser, we refresh, and we say create feature. And we need to obviously now add a rule in our message parser. So let's go ahead and go to the message parser. We'll say includes create feature. And we'll say handle create feature, if that was what we named the function. And actually we just called it handle create. So we'll input that. So let's go ahead and try again. Now we have a message response. We have a feature toggle name here. Now let's see what happens if we open up the network protocol. We hit clear, see if we can run the, and we can, but actually we're having some problems here. Let's take a look at the request. So no response, and we're right. So we do have an issue here. We're not creating the URL correctly. So let's open up this use feature API functionality, and we are going to have to create request. We're going to have to remove this. So I am noticing that the URL here is wrong. So we're going to go ahead and update this to be API admin features. And we're going to remove the project ID, and we do need to post in the entire feature toggle here. So let's call this feature toggle, and we'll do body JSON stringify. We'll spread the feature toggle here. And now what we'll go ahead and do is we'll go to create feature, which is the widget we created. This one. And then we are going to create a interface here. And I do know what it looks like. So I'm going to use this here. And we're going to say, oops. Yeah, let's do this. Each toggle equals an object, and these are going to be the keys. We'll just put in the commas here, like that. And the name is going to be feature toggle name. And we'll pass this to the create feature function. All right, so let's go ahead and go back to the browser. We'll hit refresh. And now we're probably going to be able to create a feature. We might see some strange behavior when we try to use the widget. Let's see. We'll go ahead and activate the action. And now we have the ability to create a feature here. And if we hit the button, you can see the call is successful and we created a feature, but you saw the name here was updating. That's because we're doing something wrong in our widget. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. And what's happening is we're actually recalculating this on every re-render. So we want to go ahead and make sure we only do that when the component mounts. So we'll do feature name and set feature name. That's going to be useState. And we're going to import useState and useEffect from React. And we are going to say that useEffect, and only when the component mounts do we want to create the feature toggle name. And we're going to set that into the local state of this component. Like that. And then we'll update this to be feature name. And we'll go back to our browser. Hit refresh. So it says feature toggle name is not defined. That's true. Need to do feature toggle name. Then remove this. And now if we refresh and we can do create feature, we're going to get a feature toggle named nothing, which is exactly what we wanted. So let's make sure we are doing this properly. So we have a feature toggle name. Right, so feature name needs to be here as well. So let's go back to the browser. We'll say create feature. And now we have a feature name. We'll go ahead and clear the network. We'll say create feature. And looks like we have a conflict. So that means we hit one of the names that we have used from before. So let's do another. So now we have a interesting hammock. So we'll create it. The call was successful. So now if we go to features, hammock, features, strategies. We can see that the feature is existing in the system and has been created in the API. So we've successfully used the chatbot to create a feature toggle. So I think we'll do one last thing, and let's update the theming of the chatbot, and then we'll call it a day. So let's go back to the code, and we'll go to the config. And what we'll do, actually, we'll get the color from the theme here. So the color is going to be this one. So we'll copy that, head over to the config again, and custom styles. Let's go ahead and check the documentation. Say configuration, custom styles. So we want to do the message box and the background color. Paste that in there. We'll grab the properties from here. We'll say that the bot message box background color is this color, and the chat button should also be this color. So we formatted properly. And now if we go back here, we should have the chatbot in the style of the application. So there we have it. And we're probably gonna refine this in later videos, but this is how you can use the chatbot to kind of ease the workflow of doing create, read, and update, or create operations, or any sort of API operations that you want to perform. So I hope you enjoyed that, and have a great day.